Now I'd like to introduce Keanu Gorman, the Native American Youth Enrichment Programs Co-Director, and Maria to present the PBHA 2021 Outstanding Alumni Award to Ethel Branch.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Amy. It is my pleasure to announce PBHA's 2021 Outstanding Alumna, Ethel Branch. The Outstanding Alum Award goes to a PBHA alum who has demonstrated exceptional leadership, long-term dedication, and significant impact in their public service field. Ethel previously served as a senior counselor at PBHA's Native American Youth Enrichment Program, which is one of the only summer camps in the greater Boston area that serves the needs of Native American youth, and was a Stride Right Nutchin Stride Scholar. In 2015, she was appointed as the 11th Attorney General of the Navajo Nation. While head of the Navajo Nation Department of Justice, Branch oversaw all legal affairs of the Navajo Nation, spread over 3 states, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. She has been an incredible lawyer for Indigenous rights and has been critical in advocating for the protection and advancement of our sovereignty. It is wonderful to finally meet you over the Zoom screen, Ethel.
Thank you, Keanu. I appreciate this so much. Ethel, Billy, welcome home. We're so inspired and proud of you and your continued dedication to making an incredible difference in this world and social justice in your community. It is my pleasure to present you with the 2021 PBHA Outstanding Alum Award on behalf of your PBHA family. I believe you have the award. If you want to hold it up, be too cheesy.
Very beautiful.
You can spotlight Ethel. We'd love to get a picture. And Fada, can you join us for the picture as well?
Yes, somebody throw the spotlight at me.
Ethel, you look wonderful. So good to see you.
Thank you. It's so great to see you. You look wonderful as well.
Get a quick picture.
I'll take the picture. I'll just count down to 3. 3, 2, 1. Thanks, guys. Looks great.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Liz.
Billy, we'll turn it over to you to share some remarks.
Yeah, well, I'm so impressed with the logistics operation side of things. I did receive this. I opened the box just this morning. I may have received the package yesterday or this morning. So very impressive. And I'm so excited. And it's really special for me to have Keanu introducing me. I'm just so excited to have another Navajo tribal member, from our community there at Harvard. And wonderful to see him taking a leadership role through PBHA. And I'm just going to introduce myself for Keanu and other relatives who may be watching this right now. She Ethel Branch and she being patwani nishle nakai bashish chints nijani dashiche do nakai dashanella se suzi denisha kintana kehashche akut ego dened san nishle. So thank you, everyone. I was just introducing how Keanu and I might be related through our clan system and telling him a little bit about where I'm from and where I'm speaking to you all from, which is the sacred lands of 13 Indigenous nations here in Northern Arizona at the base of Doquotzleed, which is one of the 4 sacred mountains for the Navajo people, but it's sacred to, again, 13 Indigenous nations here. And so it's such an honor to be here. Wow, I love PBHA. I have so much admiration for what you all do as an organization, and the youth and the leaders, all of you who are on this call right now, the alumni, just people, wonderful, beautiful people doing beautiful things in the world. And I want to tell you a little bit about my journey to where I am now, which was certainly guided by PBHA in many ways. So I grew up on the Navajo Nation in a really rural area. My family's had passed down this ranch through generations. So we were pretty remote from other places. There are many people who live like this, raising livestock, too far from infrastructure. We grew up without running water and electricity. And it was a beautiful, beautiful place. I grew up riding horses, herding sheep and cattle, and I loved my home, but I was right on the edge of the Navajo Nation, and so there was a lot of movement back and forth. And I started in early elementary school to really observe differences between my life and the life of the kids who lived off reservation. And this was highlighted even more because with weather conditions during the winter, I'd have to go live with one of my older siblings in town. And then I started to observe a difference in the quality of education around third grade. And then by fifth grade, I was like, okay, my friends are like starting to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol. I really want to be in a place where there's a focus on educational achievement. So I chose to ride the bus 2 hours a day to get to and from school off reservation. And worked really hard to continue down that academic path. I was really blessed to come from a family that my uncles were the first Navajo PhD. And so there was kind of that expectation that I would go to college. But a lot of my peers didn't have that same expectation. And I always remembered, like when I went to Harvard, I always wondered, like, where are the smart kids from my fifth grade class? I don't even know if they're still alive because the suicide rate for Navajo and Indigenous people is so high. And I don't know if they're in college. And I just really felt urgently that they needed to be there with me. And I started taking these classes at the Kennedy School having to do with economic development in Indian country. And it really helped highlight for me just, the intractable development challenges that exist in Indian country. And then I stumbled into a history major. I had gone to Harvard and I was like, I want to go explore things outside of my world that I came from. But I ended up in this American history course on actually the history of the American West. And that really opened my eyes to the dispossession of Indigenous nations. And I started to understand, okay, now I see why there's such a huge equity gap between my nation and surrounding jurisdictions, because on Navajo Nation, we're dealing with developing nation challenges versus like a 20-minute drive off reservation and you have everything there. Everyone has electricity, everyone has running water. There are sidewalks, the pavement is high quality. The roads are actually paved to begin with. 75% of the roads on Navajo Nation are not paved. And so all of these things were kind of coming together for me. And my junior summer, I participated in NIAP actually. And that was just this really incredible experience. And I was starting to think I'm going to go to law school or the Kennedy School, work in this area. But that summer experience was so much fun working with those kids and learning so much about how, interestingly, the experience of urban natives was very similar in many respects to the experience of natives in Indian country. And so I felt like, wow, it's this human capital element that is so important to development success in Indian country. And so I decided I wanted to become a teacher. So I moved home and did that for a while. And then just kept running up again. And that's been my journey. It's been like a learning experiment. So I tried teaching and it was like, well, I can impact these 20 kids' lives for like a year, right? But that's not enough. It helped me understand that, my kids were, many of them had substance abuse issues and mental health challenges. And these kids were a special group of kids because we were a charter school and we kind of became this shelter for the kids who'd been kicked out of all the surrounding public schools. But working with those kids was really eye-opening because it helped me realize that they were in that position because they didn't have parents in their lives, either because of substance use issues or economic issues, like their parents lived off reservation away from their children because just to have a job, right? Because unemployment's like 50% on Navajo Nation. And so that kind of drove me back to law and policy. So I ended up back at Harvard, and I did dabble in the law for at least 10 years. I made myself do 10 years, and was blessed to be called home to serve as Attorney General. And that was definitely the most amazing experience of my life. And it really helped me grapple with some of those issues I had been, thinking through in my head and trying to find solutions to. And I had a chance to make a difference, and hopefully we did, in a few different areas. And then, there was a change in administration, and government is such a great way, because no one has the resources that government has, right? In terms of funding, the tax base, the federal resources that come to government. So there's an incredible opportunity to make an impact through government service. But then there were changes in administration, and then people want to restart everything all over again. So anyway, I was watching this happen, and COVID came to my doorstep. And I remembered, I thought, well, my mom still lives on Navajo Nation, and the house that I grew up in doesn't have electricity or running water still. And a third of our people don't have either of those resources. So I was thinking about our elders who were in that situation, and watching the shelves clear in the middle of March, and thinking about them driving 2 hours to town to do their grocery shopping and not finding things that they needed, which would be very specific because it would have to be non-perishable if they didn't have electricity, right? So this was really bothering me. So I started a GoFundMe and saying, hey, I'm here off reservation. I can buy stuff and give it to our elders when they come to town to make sure they have what they need. And it just grew into this huge thing. We were able to raise $100,000 in 4 days. After the first day, it was $5,000. And so I was like, okay, I can't do this by myself. That was more than I thought I was going to raise total. So I pulled in about a dozen incredible Navajo and Hopi matriarchs, because we wanted to help both communities. My son's actually Hopi, and so I understand a little bit of the challenges that they experience as well. And it's very similar in terms of access to basic infrastructure resources. So we launched this effort, and it's been really incredible. We had over 100,000 donors through GoFundMe. We were one of the top 5 fundraisers for 2020, alongside fundraisers for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And it was just overwhelming. It was like, wow, it's so amazing to see how much love the world has for our people, and protecting our human life here, and also our culture and our language, because that was a big part of it. So that's really what I'm doing right now, is continuing that. We were blessed to get a $10 million donation from McKinsey Scott. And so we're using that to, part of that has gone, of course, to COVID relief, and is continuing. Right now we have a Delta relief program underway, and we're getting hand washing stations into homes that don't have running water. But we've also opened our first community center, which is really meant to tackle the long-term changes that must happen in our community, by helping re-stimulate a local economy, making sure families have income to buy food with. And also, we're going to have community gardens, reteaching those skills, utilizing our heirloom fruits and vegetables that are already climate change resilient, because they've been refined for our environment for thousands of years. So that's, it is really exciting. I've just actually left my law firm and have assumed this position as executive director of our nonprofit. And so now we're, going for that huge challenge of like, how do we keep families together? How do we create a stronger environment, and help empower families with the resources that they need? I mean, there's so much incredible entrepreneurism in our community and talent, but people have lacked resource to 21st century access to 21st century resources, whether it's electricity, running water, Wi-Fi, business machines, training on how to use those, and software to leverage whatever they're doing to the next level. So that's what I'm up to. And I guess the moral of the story is just be open to these opportunities, be open, because I remember leaving college and feeling like I should know what my future is. I should have an idea of what my path is and have this planned out, type A personality sort of approach. But I just kind of allowed myself to flow and just trusted that I'm doing education for a reason. And I was to learn, why my kids were in the position they were in. And all of this is kind of guiding me down a path. I don't know where it's leading, but right now I feel really excited because I have the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives on a daily basis through this work. And that's always what I've sought to do. And so I encourage you all to be curious and trust opportunities that present themselves to you. And people are always like, do what makes you happy. And I think that's been a part of this as well. Because for me, being happy and feeling rewarded in my work is making sure that, again, what I'm doing is making a positive difference in people's day-to-day lives. So I wish you all well in your journey ahead. And I hope to see you all doing incredible things to help make our world a better place for everyone and every living thing in it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ethel. We have time for probably one or two questions. Keanu, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I wonder if you have anything that you wanted to add or share or reflections. Sorry, this is a little impromptu and you can say no. But I want to give you voice if you want first before I take other questions.
Yeah, no problem. I think one of the first things that I thought about when I was told that I could present this award to you was I remember seeing the GoFundMe that was up, and it was organized by you. And so I had a specific question about the overall organization of the COVID-19 relief and how your team sort of went around the barriers that prevented you all from giving mutual aid to elders. And for an example of like what I'm talking about, my great grandma actually received a COVID-19 relief package at the chapter house, and I was just wondering, like, what were some of the challenges that came about when fulfilling mutual aid responses?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many challenges. And really, like, to me, it felt like, and I do come from a long line of warriors on both sides of my family, and it felt like it was a battle, like every day there was a challenge and we had to adapt and overcome. But really that's what we had to do. And it was like thinking back to Sun Tzu and like, okay, how do we have to prevail, we have to move forward, because to us, COVID presented an existential crisis or threat, because we have so many people in our community who have underlying conditions. We have a legacy of being a national sacrifice area for almost a century. We have over 1,000 uranium mines, most of which have not been cleaned up. That has led to huge radiation exposure to our people, huge rates of cancer. Our people are dying at 5 times the rate of stomach cancer, internal organ cancers of many different types. And so, it was like, we really must, once we had resources to make a bigger impact, it was like, this is saving lives every day. We come to work and we're just trying to save lives, and continue the existence of our people into the future with our language and our culture. And so, I was just like, it could be anything really. Initially, it was trying to buy as much food as we had the capacity to buy. I mean, we had the funding from GoFundMe, but we couldn't access it because we weren't a 501c3. So we had to find a fiscal sponsor. And then, I mean, one of the really great things was that we had so many people at the grassroots level who were, everyone was wanting the government to act and respond and protect our people. But instead, it was like shutting down local governments that people rely upon for their water, to drop off their trash at. And so everyone was kind of scared a little bit, And so when we stepped forward and we were like, here, we'll give you food and you can go give it to the elders. And we had a training program. And so we had hundreds of volunteers, almost 1,300 volunteers. Some of them were doing food distribution. Some of them were sewing masks. We had an order for like 500 masks from our police department because they couldn't even get resources from our government. And so it was really, in the early days, it was kind of almost an underground movement as well, because the government was trying to shut us down. So, that was a big challenge, but fortunately, as a former Attorney General, I kind of knew what my parameters were and how to navigate that system. And I had a lot of allies within the system already. And so, there was that challenge. There was just the challenge of moving things from place A to B, and fortunately, I mean, we were very mindful of what we were stepping into, like the number one philosophy at the outset, I was like, this is do no harm. Like we cannot be spreading COVID. So immediately, like one of the first things we did is we implemented health and safety protocols and like a system. Because it was like, there's a way to do this without exposing people. And then it was just, I don't know, serendipity, like one of our, the 12 women had a business relationship with Shamrock Foods. And so within a couple of weeks, based on her pre-existing relationship, we were able to, just on good faith, have Shamrock shipping like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of food to communities every week. And then we just had these grassroots groups step forward and say, we want to help. And, we had leaders step forward all over. And that's what it was all about. It was like, we just have to move forward as quickly as possible and like move around these barriers. And so there was a lot of trust. I mean, we just trusted people, if they wanted to help, we were like, here's our criteria, we'll train you. We're trusting you to follow this and to get the food to where it needs to go. We're trusting the people who are asking for help that, they actually need this help. And so it was a very different approach from our government, which is always like, okay, well, there's just a lot of negative inertia. But yeah, I mean, it was a huge collective effort. It was a movement. People talked about it as a movement, and it really was. And it was just having everyone committed, like knowing that this was all coming from a good place, and we were trying to get to help our most vulnerable, our elders, families with children, but inadequate income, which, that's much of our community. 77% of our community experiences food insecurity on the best of days. And then also are immunocompromised. So we had a lot of allies, and having such a large leadership team from all over the nation really helped in that respect as well, because we all knew people who could help us get things done, and who we had pre-existing trust-based relationships with. So I don't know if that, there are so many challenges I could go through, but that's kind of an overview.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Kiana, for the question. One last question, pulling from yesterday, and what's amazing is I think that I just believe in resonance, right? And just being together. And I think one piece last night that Mia Mingus mentioned was, you just, you have to do what you can with what you have, with the people around you. And I think this theme of trust, to be able to weave those together kind of creates miracles, right? So thank you for the miracles that you've created. For closing, I wonder if you could just say one thing that has kept you grounded, or that you think is important for folks to keep in mind as we all continue on this movement together. So one piece of advice or one thing that keeps you grounded that you'd like us to take away from today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just always remembering why you're doing something, right? Like we would encounter these little policy questions along the way, and it was sort of, we could get sucked into that issue, but it was like, okay, what's the bigger picture? Like, we just want to help the most people as possible, as quickly as possible, right? And so let's not let this thing get in our way. Let's keep that bigger picture in mind. And also, because everything was just like these held together by trust. You know, it's like, we're already so far out on this trust. We have to keep trusting, like, and we know people are coming from a good place. And just, you know, having that faith and of course, you know, you want to, that's sort of a thing that you're constantly getting the feedback on, right? As you're interacting with people and you're getting the reaffirmation, yes, my trust was well placed. And we've had these huge results, and we've served over 500,000 people that we've either provided food, well, everyone got PPE, and some people got food, more than half of those folks got food. And that's more than the combined population of Navajo and Hopi. And so like, it's just insane that we were able to do that. And again, it was, you know, this feedback of like, who can we trust? Who can we keep working with? Who's gonna help us do that, achieve that bigger picture? You know, and sometimes there were partners we had to walk away from because it just wasn't working, you know, like they weren't contributing to that bigger picture, or there wasn't like that those shared values that we were looking for the constant feedback on.
Great. Well, thank you, Ethel, so much for being with us. Thank you for the blessing you are in this world, and for agreeing to serve as this year's honoree. We couldn't think of anyone better and more representative of this place we are. So thank you for all that you do.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure, Alan.
Ethel, Alan, Curtis, to what extent have you thought about how Indigenous people, Latinx leaders, African-American leaders, and Asian American leaders in the nonprofit world could form stronger and tighter alliances to help heal our divided society?
Oh gosh, I haven't had much time to think about that, but I think there is absolutely that potential. And I'd love to have a space to come together with other folks with that question, to kind of think through like how would we do this? I mean, there's been such incredible allyship in what we've been doing. We had a mutual aid group out of Flagstaff that was one of our collaborators. And that was the other thing, like we were very adaptable. You know, it wasn't just like, you must be one of our volunteers. We did require everyone to have the same training, but it was like, we just need as many people helping as possible, as quickly as possible. And, you know, we're going to give you guys credit, like you're a nonprofit, you want to be part of this, your grassroots effort. We want to elevate you and lift up your leadership because we need more of that in our community. But, you know, there was some groups from Phoenix, African-American groups that were coming up and helping in communities through one of our partners. And I just, you know, I just thought that was really amazing and incredible. And it was this great learning opportunity to kind of share the reality of what Indian country looks like with folks who could be allies. And there were opportunities to learn from each other and strategies. And yeah, I mean, because I think, you know, these issues, the BIPOC issues, a lot of these issues are just basic human rights issues. You know, like we all want our kids to have food on the table for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know, like we all want our children to be safe. And so how do we bridge that gap? I mean, and maybe that's a way. You know, I've mentioned this before, like, you know, moving from the civil rights language to human rights language. And lots of people disagree with that. But I mean, for me, that's what it is. I mean, we're all human beings, and we all, if we acknowledge our shared humanity and we step away from more of the politics side of things and just think about, you know, what do human beings need? Like, what is our minimum standard of quality of life for human beings in our community? And let's make sure that that's being met for everyone. And the how to meet that is where you get into the details of maybe more of the civil rights type work. Like, okay, we're noticing that this group that's disproportionately of this type of background is experiencing this inequity, and like, how do we lift that up? But I would love to have that conversation. I think it's a much needed conversation, particularly at this moment in time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alan. Ethel, thank you for joining us again.